So I'll hand it over to you, Paula. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Julianne, and welcome everyone to the penultimate talk in our series on artificial intelligence. Today's speaker is Dr. Mateus Rocha, who comes to us from the University of Florida's College of Dentistry, where he's a clinical assistant professor and director of the Center for Dental Biomaterials. Dr. Rocha has dedicated his career to translational research with a focus on applying findings from basic science to improve oral health. Dr. Rocha received his D.D.S degree from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and master's and Ph.D. degrees in dental materials from the State University of Campinas, Brazil. And with a background in nanoscience and chemistry, Dr. Rocha has developed singular dental biomaterials and biodevices with patents, prototypes, and products. And in 2021, he received the Basic Sciences Teacher of the Year Award in the College of Dentistry. As the consummate educator, Dr. Rocha finds educational methods to engage students in the basic concepts in dental biomaterials. And his main goal is to make biomaterials easy to understand, thus enabling students to think more quickly through the decision-making process in different clinical scenarios. In June of this year, as part of the College of Dentistry's Faculty Research Seminar Series, Dr. Rocha presented today's topic, the use of artificial intelligence and smart dental materials towards the future of dentistry, which will explore the uses of AI in restorative dentistry and the use of nanotechnology in creating smart materials. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dr. Rocha.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very, very excited to be presenting here today. When I received the invitation, I was very glad because I just had finished presenting the seminar to all the faculty members. And then I received an email from Paul, and then you want to present to us as a very, very nice group of people. I said, sure thing, why not? And then I hope you guys, all of you, enjoy the presentation today. And I made a very special presentation today. I put new things because, as you know, machine learning, artificial intelligence is updating every day. So everything is gonna go very, very nice today. I will share my screen with all of you. Let me just click here. And during this presentation, we know that I know that we separate a time for the questions in the end. But if you have any questions during the presentation, you can put on the chat. If Paula can help me with moderating the chat, I can answer your question right away. It doesn't need to be a formal session. I'm here to interact with all of you. Okay?
Yes, and I'm happy to do that and invite everyone to use the chat rather than just hopping on. I think we'll be able to get questions in, but in a timely manner, but then still let Dr. Rocha finish his seminar, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end as well. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
So today's topic, we're going to talk about the use of artificial intelligence towards the future of dentistry. I listened a little bit of the conversation in the backstage here, and then I saw, oh, machine learning, it can be scary and things like that. Is today's presentation going to be scary as well? I hope don't, because I know that artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science in general can be very tricky in terms of privacy, security, and all of that. But if you think about the progress of technology, it's so good for, I would say, the advance of humanity and all of that. So I would start with one thing. Everything is connected. Your car is connected to your home, that is connected to your watch, that is connected to everything. Without you realizing, everything is connected to you. The thing is, nowadays, people can trust cars to drive for themselves. And if you think about that, it's kind of crazy. Of course, I don't recommend you having a meal while driving. It's very dangerous, but that's the future of technology. Everything is going to be autonomous. And when you go to the dentist, what is changing now? How can a restoration, how can a diagnosing, a dental treatment can be different now? how dentistry is changing that way. So nowadays, we already implement several ways of using artificial intelligence that basically computers and materials can interact with many different ways, and the dentist can be more proficient on diagnosing a disease and being able to treat the patient better. So today's topic, I'm gonna talk about 4 main objectives. So we're gonna have an overview of oral disease to understand what us dentists are looking when we are seeing a patient. And later, we're gonna discuss a little bit, probably all of you, that's after all my colleagues that present in AI, you have a very good background how machines can think. And I will focus on artificial intelligence in dental healthcare. And the scary part is the future, how things are gonna be in the future. I'm here forecasting what's gonna happen, or is this something that is never gonna happen? Okay, so let's go in overview of oral disease. We know that one of the most common oral disease is caries. So here in this picture, I can show you that is a tooth that is with a caries problem. So here we see the different layers: enamel right here, dentin, and the pulp. So when the process of caries starts, it starts to demineralize the tooth and then goes all the way to the pulp. Have you ever heard the term root canal treatment? So the term root canal treatment, it basically, when the caries is so big that gets a problem into the pulp, there is no way to that pulp to recover. And then basically the dentist has to remove completely the pulp that is full of nerves, blood cells, and all of that, and remove so you don't feel pain. The thing is, how a dentist can tell what is happening inside a tooth. That's a very, very tricky part. So in dentistry, if you go to a dentist for a clinical exam, they're gonna say to you, let's have x-rays. And with the x-rays is the tool that we use to diagnose caries. So basically here, we have the same tooth. Here is a real image of an extracted tooth where we have a section in the caries process. If you have a radiograph of that tooth, you're gonna see this little area here, there is a radiolucency. So based on that, the dentist needs to identify that image and tells, oh, we have a caries here that together with the what we see clinically, we have to treat that. We have to do a filling, we have to do a crown, we have to do root canal treatment. So based on those images, we are able to diagnose which type of treatment that patient needs to receive. Okay, so based on that and talking about those different images, how computer can help us. All right, another very common disease that you probably have heard about is periodontal disease. It's a different type of disease where when you have a lot of biofilm or plaque accumulate on the tooth, this can start an inflammation on the tooth, and then the tooth starts to have some problems, especially losing the retention in the bone. So basically, the dentist, to identify in which level of periodontal disease you are, it tries to calculate from this part of the tooth, what we call CEJ, the junction between the cementum and the enamel, to the tip of the bone. As longer as this distance, more advances your periodontal disease. And to avoid that, you go for cleanings, scaling, and all of that. So basically, the way to diagnose is trying to measure, as I said, how much the probe can penetrate on that area, and also several other factors as inflammation, medical history, and all of that. So again, the computers are very good to help us dentists diagnosing a disease. Another area that is very interesting about dentistry with artificial intelligence now is the treatment, because computer can help us, for example, when we are making a crown, to design the crown and give the shape of the tooth that the patient needs, and many other things that we'll explore here in this lecture today. But you might think that your next dentist is going to be Dr. Terminator. Well, even Arnold Schwarzenegger was not able to escape from the dentist. And you might be, oh my God, I will come to Dr. Rocha's office and he's going to be an avatar or something like from the future. Well, I don't think your next dentist will look like this one, but we can see that the future is going a little bit towards machines that can completely diagnosing and operating. It's very far away from what is the reality, but it's something that we can think about. Here's a video from 2017. That was the first autonomous dental implant robot. So this robot basically is capable of placing implants on a patient. So this was the first one, 2017, and now they're keeping advancing that. Of course, this is not a common practice and still within prototypes. And this robot has a precision of 0.3 millimeters, so it's very, very good. So most likely this is going to be the way that surgeries are going to be in the future and all of that. Nowadays, the way that we make surgeries, for example, to place implants, we make the models in 3D virtual models, and then we create what we call a surgical guide. And based on that, the surgical guide, using different types of artificial intelligence algorithms, can tell you the perfect place for an implant and can tell you how many implants you need. It can tell you the density of your bone. So all of that is being applied. Okay, so now you're thinking, oh my God, how computers are changing dentistry? Is this something that is today? If I walk to my dentist's office tomorrow, I'm gonna see those things. Well, a couple of those technologies you're gonna see around. But the thing is, if I get you or any student and train to detect caries, train to detect a periodontal disease and how to treat that, in 2 years, you're going to be able to do this. And in 4 years, you're going to be completely independent in that. The thing is, we have the same language. We speak the same language. So I can tell you, you see this radiolucency. So the way to communicate is pretty straightforward. The problem is that how we can translate our natural language to a computer so the computer can understand us and give us an answer that we are going to understand. So that's how it comes the second topic here, how machines can think. I will go very brief on that, but basically machines have a very unique way to process the data. And if you think very deep into that, it's very similar how our brains operate. So the first concept of artificial intelligence came in 1952 with Alan Turing. That basically was the first time that they introduced the concept of artificial intelligence. And it was very interesting because he proposed the following thing, that basically a computer can be called intelligent when a human cannot detect if that task was performed by a machine or a human. So the thing is how machines can think. All right, now I'll try to make things simple. Think about how you teach your kids. Many things you teach your kids by supervising them, how instruct them. But many things kids learn by themselves. I'm pretty sure that a 1-year-old kid is able to know about gravity without never entering a physics course. How? Basically, that kid gets a plushy dog and then throws on the floor. And then all of a sudden, ooh, that's interesting. And that kid later go ahead and get the second object and throw. And again and again and again. Without realizing that kid is putting in its brain that basically everything that she grabs from the floor and throw is going to end up on the floor again. So this is called unsupervised learning. This way, machines also can do this. You can throw a set of data on the machine, and the machine later can come to an outcome that you never thought that to the machine. The second way to supervise is a supervised learning, that basically you tell the machine, please don't throw this cup, a glass mug on the floor because it's going to break. So all those things are very similar to what we do in our lives. And basically, the machines, they operate exactly like the human brain. If you think about the human brain, we have a cell called neuron. So the neuron is the one responsible to everything, the way that you think, moving your hand, moving your arms, everything. So the neuron, the cell, basically sends electrochemical signals that goes on dendrites and go all the way through the cell and end up connecting a different neural cell. The machines are the same thing. You give that machine an electron input that it can be positive or negative, and within the processor of the machine, it will give you an answer. If you had a single neural cell in your body, you basically cannot process anything. But think that you have more than 1 trillion neuron cells. So the thing is, the machines now, with the technology that we have, you can have several cells like that we call perceptrons. And this way, the machine starts to learn as the human brain will do. And a very important thing, and probably you have heard about, is that there is a difference in terminology for the different things. So artificial intelligence is basically a technique which enables machine to mimic human behavior. So I'm talking about a robot that can place an implant, a computer that can diagnose Caries disease. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence where it implements set of statistics, mathematics, or logical process to improve the experience of the interaction between human and the operator and the machine. And deep learning will use a set of neural networks that will make this a little bit more feasible. In a simple way, basically, the difference between machine learning and deep learning is that machine learning will need something to extract the information. So you need someone to tell you, oh, this is a car, this is a motorcycle, or is different. A deep learning, the algorithm or all the process is so well set that this car can be even classified if it's red, what is the brand, and all of that. So there is this little difference. And in dentistry, basically, we use almost all of those different types of machine learning. We can use unsupervised learning, supervised learning, reinforced learning. I won't go deep into that. I want to explore more what happens in dentistry. Okay, so how artificial intelligence is being used in dental healthcare? Basically, the dentist today has different ways to use the artificial intelligence technologies. One is the use of robots. So robots can help us in automation of process. So for example, the lab that I use to see my patients in faculty practice, basically every impression that I send to the lab, and I'll show you a video of the lab that I use, can scan and automatically makes everything using robots. Of course, there is someone supervising the robots and making all the diagnosis, but everything can be automatic. The second thing is the visual perception. So nowadays, they're trying to develop dental assistants, virtual dental assistant that can handle you the instrument based on what is happening on the operatory. And of course, we can have things for safety. If you're in a surgery and you need something from your assistant, and we know that humans sometimes they will have a fail in communication in the operatory room, but a machine has some safety devices that will avoid us to getting injured during a procedure. And one thing that is being very big is what we call big data approaches, where we use the data to analyze the data and be more proficient in diagnosing and treating different disease. So, of course, if I explore everything in dentistry today, we're gonna spend the whole afternoon and probably we're gonna keep the conversation tomorrow. So I separate 3 main topics that I believe are the most important ones, and 2 of them are is being a reality nowadays. So the first one is radiographic diagnosis. So how radiographic diagnosis happens? First of all, many dentists nowadays think that the radiographic diagnosis using AI is going to completely remove their role in the participation of the diagnosis of disease and the treatment of the patient. But think about a parking assistant. You still have the responsibility to not hit the bumper of your neighbor car. So Radiograph diagnosis now, the technology that we have is basically to assist us to get something that might escape in our eyes during the procedure. Because think that I see 8 patients a day. So I have always my assistant and a coworker checking my radiographs to see if anything was missed during that treatment. So we are using machines to make more precise diagnosis. Remember that I mentioned these 2 main oral diseases, and these are the main focus of the dentist. Of course, we have many other diseases, but how we use the machines and the radiograph diagnosis to help us triggering the right treatment for dental caries and periodontal disease. So first of all, there is a technology called image recognition that uses basically artificial neural networks to identify many things on the radiographs. So here's a typical radiograph from exam. So of course here is tagged with the different areas that I showed you in the beginning. So here we have all the teeth, premolars, molars, wisdom teeth, and the computer can understand what is enamel, what is pulp, what is dentin, what is a restorative material, what is an amalgam, and can tell you if this is getting extended. So it's much easier to see this image here where you have the color coded, where you can see where is the enamel, where is the amalgam, where is the caries lesion. So this way, the machine can help you and assist you saying, hey, Dr. Rocha, take a look on the premolar. I think there is a caries in there. And then I can go there and diagnose and confirm, yes, there is caries in there. We need to treat. And the best option should be a composite restoration of filling, whatever it is. The other thing is periodontal disease. So the periodontal disease, one of the important factors is what I call bone loss. So the bone loss is basically the distance from the what we call CJ, cementum enamel junction of the tooth, and the tip of the bone. As more periodontal disease the patient will have, higher is the number. So the distance of the CJ to the bone level. And imagine a tree without having enough support for the root. So this can happen with teeth as well. So by the time that the teeth lose the support of the bone, they start to get mobile. And the only way to solve that problem is basically at some point, if it's too mobile, is extracting and placing an implant. Now we're going to talk about also restorative digital workflow, how the digital workflow can help us treating the cases. And this is, I will show a video from the lab that I use, and many of my colleagues use as well. Is a lab that is in California, is called Glidewell. Is a lab that has a lot of technology with automation, and it's very interesting the way that they operate. And I will explain everything after the video. Let me just play the video.
The first step is to digitize your physical impression with specialized micro-CT scanning technology. Technology used by companies like NASA, where precision and reliability are paramount. This allows us to better capture undercuts and other concavities without risk of damaging or degrading your original impression. Once we have that digital impression, we can replace the traditional plaster model process with our virtual plaster experience. Magnification tools at this step enable us to more precisely mark margins and trim the die. And if an error is identified, the user can simply undo and revert to a prior file state, rather than having to retrieve the original impression and pour a new model. In fact, digital file storage means we no longer need to retain physical impressions or study models at all. So potentially pathogenic surfaces and cross-contamination are all but eliminated. With our virtual study model, we're ready to design the restoration. Initial designs are automatically proposed by a proprietary software that makes use of machine learning algorithms derived from millions of unique cases and considers the morphology of the patient's surrounding dentition. From there, the technician can quickly accept or modify the design as needed, further teaching the software along the way. The final design is routed to our computerized production center, an intelligently connected assembly of motors, sensors, software, and robotics that is less susceptible to the limitations of variations of human interaction. With this nearly hands-free operation and multiple quality control checkpoints, it offers levels of efficiency and visibility never before seen in the dental industry. Since all of this takes place in our lab, no capital equipment purchases or workflow alterations are required of you. Simply impress as you normally would, ship to Glidewell, and expect to receive your final restoration in as little as 3 to 5 days. You and your patients win. To learn more or submit a case, please give us a call or visit us online. Stay well.
So this is very interesting. So basically, when I'm seeing my patients here in the clinics at UFCD, let's suppose that you have to have restoration that we call indirect restoration. That's crowns, prostheses, implants, and all of that. So there are two technologies that we use nowadays, and I would say every faculty is using. Is either we make an impression of the preparation that we make on the patient's teeth, and then we send that impression to the lab, and the lab will process everything automatically. So the impression gets there, they just put that on the machine, and the workflow works everything with augmentation. Another process is that I can deliver the crown in the same day. How come? There are some digital scanners that basically I make the prep, and then instead of making an impression, I use a 3D digital scanner. It's sort of a LiDAR like they have on the iPhone, but with high precision, and then creates your virtual model. From that virtual model, I can go on the computer, design the crown, select the right shape of the tooth, and send directly to what we call milling machines. Those are portable milling machines that in 15 minutes, it can come from a block of ceramic to the format of the crown, personalized for your tooth. And then right away, we can cement that in the patient mouth. So those technologies using artificial intelligence to speed up the process is very, very good, because everyone that ever had a crown and had to go on a provisional knows how bad it is to stay with a provisional in the mouth. It can come out and all of that. So all those technology will help a lot. And the other topic that is very, very interesting is predicting the best dental treatment. The most difficult question that I receive from my patients is, doctor, how long this restoration is gonna last? That's a very, very hard question. And a good dentist will answer for you, I don't know, because there are so many factors involved that we cannot predict what is gonna happen tomorrow. We have an estimative for how long a ceramic can last, for how long a crown can last, and all of that. But thinking that all these models nowadays are becoming digital, everything that becomes digital becomes data. So if it's connected and you can use machines, you can use that to predict how long that restoration is gonna last based on how big was the tooth, how big was the cavity. That patient has periodontal disease. That patient has on the medical record diabetes, has hypertension. Those things can influence on the treatment. So now the technology is evolving on processing data. We evolved the past decades on how to collect data with the advent of broadband internet and all of that. But now we have tons of data on the internet. Probably everyone that has Facebook I saw the intro on the course, it was very interesting about CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Everyone has information spread on the internet. And now the thing is how everyone is using that data to predict what's gonna happen in the future. So dentistry is trying to use that data to check your behavior. Are you someone that is trying to eat a lot of sweets and things like that and in that direction? Of course, car insurance will check everything on your life as well. And that's the way that dentistry and machine learning, everything is going forward. But let's drive us to the reality now. So this is a paper that was published in 2019 in the Journal of Dental Research. It's the most respected journal in dentistry. And I would say that this starts a series of studies that basically shows and target how we can predict the failure rate of the restoration. So this study basically uses the CAD/CAM, exactly the technology that I mentioned, where we can scan and mill the crown the same day. And based on the size of the tooth, the patient medical history, everything, it can predict how composite resin crowns, that is a very specific material, can last. And basically the conclusion of this study shows that there are several factors that will influence, and there is a very, very weak correlation with some of the studies that it's put as a reference. So still, the amount of data that this study shows is very weak, but shows promising results about the use of machine learning to try to predict the restorations. Another thing that is interesting is that it's not predicting how long is gonna last the restoration, but also is the results that you're expecting from me as a dentist are the ones that you're looking for. Because I get some patients with very high expectations for the treatment. They think that they're gonna come to my office and they will get Brad Pitt smile, but sometimes it's impossible based on the situation. So one study that I developed here in school together with my master's student, Dr. Carlos Cosi, was a way to predict how it's gonna be the restoration before I deliver that to the patient. So this is something very, very important, because sometimes we can make, of course, mock-ups to try to mimic, but one thing that is very different is how can we simulate the color, because the mock-up shows only a completely white teeth. It looks like a tile. It's completely weird, and the patients sometimes don't get satisfied with that. But the format of the teeth are good. But how about the color? So this was a study that we developed here. It's basically an algorithm to assist the dentist on deciding which shade is the best shade for the patient's tooth. So here's a clinical case. This patient came to the office. Dr. Coase was the one treating that case, and the patient was complaining about the shape of the teeth. If you look here, the color and the shade of the tooth is good, but the shape, the anatomical form, is something that was bothering the patient. So there are those black spaces and everything here. Technically saying, this case is very simple to solve, because fixing the shape of the teeth with the AI that I already showed you, we can get very good results. But the problem is, and I'll say that the shade is very easy to get as well, because everything is the same tone. But the thing is, a patient like this one, that the shape of the tooth, the format of the tooth is good, but the shade, the color is not good. How can we treat that? Basically, our scanners cannot look into that dimension of color. So that's one of the main issues that we have in dentistry. So still, the way that we select the shade that your teeth are gonna look like is looking at the teeth and looking at the reference. And we decide, the dentist, oh, this teeth is gonna be this color, it's gonna be that color. Okay, so what is the main issue here is that when you have a tooth that is completely different in color, you don't know how this is gonna look in the end, because there are many factors that can influence that. So in this case, for example, you have a tooth that is slightly different color. This patient is someone that is very demanding on the treatment. So if you try to restore the tooth, you're gonna start doing a prep. So the preparation is basically a way to create space for the material, and then we use a cement to bond the ceramic on top of that. If you look at here, this is a little bit more yellowish. I hope in your monitors is showing as good as in here. The thing is, even the most experienced clinicians, they take long times to get the right color. So if you see here, of course, in the monitor, the shade is not that apparent, but you can see that it's slightly different. And depending on the patient, let's say that patient is a model of, it will not be sufficient. So it takes like 4 or 5 attempts to get to the right color. And this is time consuming. The money that you spend on that, everything is very bad. So what we did is, our research question is, if we find a way to collect the data from this color here based on pictures, based on spectrophotometric, that is one of the analyses that we did, can we predict what is going to happen later? Because as I said, there are many, many things that can influence that. The translucency and shade of the ceramic, the preparation, the cement, and the substrate. So what we did, we made in a summary, we made an algorithm that basically, with the pictures of the patient and the digital models, we can use that data and import that to and merge everything together on the computer, and then the computer will automatically tell the machine how thick should be the restoration, which color is the ideal one. So that way, without having the dentist having to select everything alone, he has a machine to guide the dentist as our park assistant, saying, hey, for that patient, select the color A2. Do a prep with 1 millimeter of thickness, and this way you can deliver results that are more close to what the patient is expecting. Okay, so now comes the scary part. It's now my data from all my teeth work is going over the internet. Well, technology is evolving too fast, and I'm pretty sure that now the toothbrushes that are being released with this new connection to the internet, they can't, if they don't have any privacy policy, they can't get your information. But I'm pretty sure that companies, and especially the people from states, they will look for that. They will not let your privacy information, especially medical record information, going on the internet that easy. But how is the future of the dentistry? I would say that the future are going to be towards material that communicate with the dentist, can communicate with the computers and all of it. So one of the areas that we use a lot to make the communication is the use of nanotechnology. So nanotechnology is basically the management of the molecule and the atoms in a very, very small scale. Nanotechnology. So here's graphite. So graphite is basically carbon organized in a certain way. So if you use that to write on a paper, basically it's going to have some unique properties. But here is the carbon organized in a different way, and then we call these graphene. So the graphene here is showing that it's cutting a block of ice, and then you might think, oh, it's because it's very sharp. No, actually, the graphene has some properties that are so unique that what is cutting the ice is the temperature of your hand. So the graphene is transferring all the heat from your hand to the block of ice and is melting the block of ice. So basically, this is because the carbons are organized in a certain way that it can have very nice thermal conductivity. So the heat from your hand can pass very easily. And with this technology, you can basically fine tune and adjust basically any material. On the technology of nanoparticles, every property will change and tune the particle to a certain objective. So a nanoparticle can have on the surface different types of drugs or ligands, and those drugs can be used, for example, to target a certain type of cell, and it will release that to that cell. Depending on the size of the particle also, what can happen is that particle can have completely different properties, and so on. You can have different shapes, and each one of the characteristics will give that material a certain property. One area that I've been doing research since 2014-15 is the use of surface plasmon resonance. This name sounds like, oh my God, rocket science, but it's in theory very simple to understand. What is surface plasmon resonance? So if you think about a particle, when that particle is, you shine a light on that particle, if the particle is bigger than the size of the wavelength, the size of the light, that particle will simply scatter the light, and then it will either absorb, will make it the material big and everything. But if the particle is so small that is smaller than the size of the light will pass through that particle. And then you think, oh, it's just gonna pass through. No, it's gonna make something on that particle. And this is a very interesting property that we've been exploring a lot. So basically, when the light passes through the particle, we have these waves. So it's like you on the Atlantic Ocean on the waves going up and down. And in the particle, what you're gonna have is the electrons that goes up and down, up and down. And if you think that way, what happens with this oscillation, it gives energy. And this energy can be used in many different ways. And this energy also, depending on what I'm putting on the particle, can give you different things as well. These are the three main things that I've been researching on is the development of heat to go, if I want to kill a cancer cell using heat, I can put a ligand that goes all the way to the cancer cell, and then I shine a light through the skin, and then that heat will kill the cell. I can use electron transfer to make reactions. But one thing that is very interesting for smart restorative materials, it's what we call antenna effect. So antenna effect is the capacity of the material to transmit that energy in a different form of energy. And how this can be applied to dentistry. So I'll make this pretty simple. This is a tooth where we have here the crown prep, the prep that the dentist does before receiving the crown. And here's the crown that comes from the lab. So when we cement that crown in the patient's mouth, basically, if we shine a certain type of laser light and that material has a unique nanoparticle property, will emit sort of a radio frequency. So how we target that? If we put on that material, let's say a particle that is triangular in shape, that particle triangular in shape will respond in a radio frequency, let's say blue. If you put a square, it's gonna be green, and a rectangle is gonna be red, and so on. So depending on the particle that you put inside the material will have a different response to light. And based on that, imagine that in the composition of the material, I have these different types of particle. And then is the time that I start to communicate with my machine, that the machine will read as 1 and 0s, positive or negative. So based on that, I can create a composite that will, if there is none of those particles, that composite was placed in 2012 or was manufactured in 2012. And this is very important because we dentists, when we're making the procedure, we have to write everything on the medical record of the patient. So when we refer back, it needs to be there. But of course, there are some situations in some clinics or in some situations that the dentist will not write everything. Will not write what was the material, what was the manufacturer, what was the lot of that material. Those are information that are too much. We need to inform which material you use, for how long did it take the procedure. Those are important information. But let's suppose there is sort of a recall of that certain type of composite. How can we identify if that was the composite that we use? So many other things that we can do it. And here you're thinking, Dr. Rocha, this just 3 particles, you can only store the date. That's not that important. It's the beginning of things. Yes, indeed, it's the beginning, but it's something that you can start store information within a material and read from that material. But there is one very interesting property of these particles. Remember that I said that you can add little things on the particle. You can add a magnet on that particle. And then you can basically organize the particles on the material. So if the particles are organized within the material, basically when the laser light goes through here and then detects what is in that material, it will detect by segment. Okay, this sounds familiar, the barcode. So if you go to the grocery store, you're gonna get a Coca-Cola or a Sprite, and then you're going to scan that with a barcode, and then you tell, oh, this is a Coca-Cola, this is a Sprite. So the same thing can happen in dentistry if we develop this technology further. We basically use the scanner that we use to scan the teeth for preparation, and scan the tooth or scan the material and say, oh, this was placed by Dr. Rocha in 2021, and it took this, and this will facilitate a lot the procedure. Another thing is, this is a technology that is also in development, is can we use the toothbrush and those nanoparticles to send that information over the internet to your physician? So you don't have to go and come every 6 months to the physician or to the dentist to check your restoration. Let's say that if you have a problem, the toothbrush itself can detect if there is any difference on the material and send this over the internet to your dentist. So all those technologies are scary. Let's say a hacker goes in your toothbrush and then say, oh, they have a caries here. I will increase your insurance, how much you pay for the dental insurance. So all of that it sounds scary. But if you think about how this technology can assist us to be more efficient on the treatment. You are home, you don't have any problems, you don't have to come to me. I would love to see you either coming for a cleaning or in the grocery store. If you come to me to have a restoration done, it's something on my part that is not being done correctly, because I don't want you to have caries, I don't want you to have periodontal disease. So all those informations in this communication can help you. For example, we have the Apple Watch that is monitoring or heartbeat and all that. Can we monitor how is the pH of your saliva to see if you're in a high caries risk group, and then you can high chances of developing caries. Okay, so I thank you so much for your attention. It was a great pleasure to lecture. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope it was not something very scary or too difficult, and I'm open for questions. I'll be very happy to handle that.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rocha. That was really interesting. I think it's going to make us all think a little differently about the next time we go to see our dentist. And then we'll be asking him if he or she is, up on the latest tech. So we'll keep them on their toes. I was especially interested in the last part too, on nanotechnology. I mean, I think that's pretty interesting stuff. I was curious about so that nano spectrophotometer. Because to me, right away, you think of, okay, we're avoiding X-rays, so we're getting rid of more X-rays, and we're using maybe a spectrophotometer. But I was curious, like, what wavelengths you're maybe using on those spectrophotometers. Are they safer, I would say, than like doing an X-ray?
Yes, they are. So actually, they are visible light. So my research, when I started my master's degree, I started to researching on dental curing lights, the ones that we use the blue light to make the composite harder. And then based on the research on photoinitiators and all of that, I realized that the photoinitiators can have this certain type of behavior. So all this nanospectrophotometer is going to be within the visible range. Maybe it will extend a little bit on the infrared, but we know that for dentistry, UV light is completely prohibited. So anything below 380 nanometers should be avoided. That's why we don't see more those halogen lamps. They are not very good in consumption, and everything's LED. So the technology basically on that one is a nanoparticle that when you have, let's say, a protein on the saliva, and that protein attaches to that nanoparticle, the wavelength that hits will respond. It will hit you're gonna have a sort of a white light, and the response on the nanospectrophotometer is different. So you can tell, oh, this patient has a protein on the saliva that is an indicative for oral cancer or things in that direction. Of course, the main challenge is to infuse that on the materials. We make polymers, and those polymers, they need to be very stable. But in the oral cavity, we are brushing, we are eating, we have saliva all day. So we got to the point that we can make this happen, but how this can be effective? How long is it gonna last? I don't want my patient coming every week to replace that sensor. So it needs a technology that needs to evolve in that aspect.
Okay. Well, I have a few more questions, but I'm going to just open it up to the floor. I think Anita Spring, you had your hand up first.
Yep, let me unmute. Well, Dr. Rocha, that was just a wonderful talk. Thank you so much. I may never go to a regular dentist anymore. And I wonder if you could comment. I mean, it looks like you've looked at the good, the bad, and the scary. But what about the rest of us who are going to regular dentists, I would say, not people who are professors at the University of Florida and have all the technology that you've talked about? Are we going to see any of these technologies creeping in to private practices, number one? And are they going to be able to affect the outcome in terms of the density and hardness and the blue composite, making it harder and so forth? Or are we just going to learn about this and not be able to consume it or buy it? So that's one of my first questions. And what do you think the difference is between university dentistry, where people have all these bells and whistles, and the average dental practice?
That's a great question. So I will address them separately. So the first question regarding how is going to be the regular dentist. I think that if I be in a private practice in Gainesville, I would be operating the same way. If you think about the technology that I use in faculty practice is exactly the same most private practice they use as well. So for example, Glidewell, that laboratory that I use, you can ship that on FedEx and then get that in 3-4 days. So I'm already using, and any dentist with a license can use that technology. CAD/CAM technology, the one that we can scan and mill at the same day, many practices have this as well. So you're gonna see on the advertisement of dentists, single day crowns. So that's a sign that they have this technology of CAD/CAM. If you go for someone in oral surgery to have an implant or a denture over implant, for sure, if they are a dentist that is keeping with technology, I'm not saying keeping with technology knowing what was released yesterday, but what was released 1 year ago, 2 years ago, they are gonna use digital workflow, which means that they're gonna make impressions, but everything on the planning, the way they're gonna place the implant, how is the density of your bones, everything is gonna be on the hands of the dentist with that technology. So dentists realize, no matter how many years of experience in practice, is that if you use digital workflow, you can be much more proficient on your results. What I mean is that before, when we had to place the implants, it would take a panoramic x-ray using little rules with different scales and measure with a caliper to see, oh, I'm gonna place here and there. And the chances of that going for errors, medical errors, was huge. With digital dentistry, they make an impression, they send to Glidewell, and then all of a sudden they receive a surgical guide with all the places where they're supposed to put the implants. So this is very, very close to everyone that goes in there. I think your other question was about the difference between university and faculty, correct?
Private practices, yeah.
Yes. So as I said, it's pretty similar, the both scenarios. If you want to come to the faculty practice for a visit, or I can show the dental school, of course, I just have to check something related to COVID policies. But if you're interested, we can go in the school and I can show all these technologies about scanning and milling on the same day. Now, the technology related to more the futuristic thing, that is more in the development phase. So I would say the nanotechnology, the smart materials, all of that is still in the labs. So if you come to school for a visit, I will show my labs. You're gonna see a lot of beakers, lights, and crazy stuff as a regular lab would be. And it's a completely off what I do in clinical practice. And I think there is a gap between the technology that I'm developing and the technology that we use now, the same way we had this gap before. And I think it's important for researchers, dental researchers, to be feeling these two gaps, feeling the gap where you have to produce research to be immediately translated to clinical practice and technology that will be here in 30, 35 years. So the algorithm, for example, is a technology that is in the latest development. So we are building a software now to implement that to CAD/CAM. I hope I answer everything. If I miss anything, please
Thank
go
you.
ahead and ask again.
I'll send you an email.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Rocha too, I mean, I think what you just said, the university has, for the last quite a few years, has really focused more on translational research. So where we get the basic science folks together with the clinical folks so that we can realize those technological advancements sooner. Because really, a lot of what happens in the clinical setting does stand on the shoulders of basic scientists. So that's where we've had the trouble in the past, is just pushing that along a little more quickly so we get it into the hands of the clinicians and we get that know-how. And so like you said, the CAD/CAM, the CIRAC machines, those are all out there now. Now, I think some practices are better with those than others. And a lot of practices have their, say, assistants doing those, and some of those are better than others. So I think, you're still having to pick and choose because, there is a learning curve, with technology out in practice. So I think, it's not as widespread as it's probably going to be, for that reason. But at some point, I think, it's all going to be there. Shirley, you had a question.
Yes, you have continued to frighten us. Sounds like you are about to put all the local dental ceramicists out of work. But however, my question is, the environment in a person's mouth is very important. You mentioned the pH being right. How are you advising all of us older people who have dry mouths? What is your recommendation?
That's a great question. So one thing that is interesting about dry mouth is getting right the diagnosis. So we know medications that will have interaction with some glands and then will cause dry mouth. In terms of the material detecting dry mouth, I don't know why we got to this point in diagnosing that. But based on these algorithms that is being developed, is at some point we're gonna be able to diagnose the dry mouth using the algorithm. Nowadays, what I do with my patients, first of all, the patient comes to my office, and then the patient reports, Dr. Rocha, I think I have dry mouth. Okay, what are the reasons that you feel that you have dry mouth? I feel burning sensation. I feel that I wake up with the mouth very dry. Sometimes the food changes the taste. It's kind of weird. Okay, so let's investigate. Give me the list of medications that you are taking. You have any disease that we need to look forward? And also in that appointment, what I do is I do a saliva test. A saliva test, basically, I test the amount of saliva, and everyone now it's aware how to do the saliva test. It's basically same of the COVID test. And I check the amount of saliva that you have. I can check the buffering of the saliva, how long your saliva takes to buffer if you have a caries process. What is the quality of the saliva? So in the case that we have a medication that is causing the problem, I can talk with the physician and tell patient is having this problem. Can we change the medication for a different use? Most of the times we can't, because the disease that you're treating with that medication is more important than the dry mouth. So what is the solution? The solution is I can prescribe different types of toothpaste. Those toothpaste, they will have a little bit of a different amount of, let's say, minerals and things that will help reducing a little bit the saliva and the dry mouth and the consequences of dry mouth. And we have artificial saliva that you can use during the night to mitigate the problems. And if you have a syndrome that needs to be treated, also we have, together I work with many otopathologists here, and then I send to them and we try to work together in trying to solve the problem with dry mouth. I'm not sure how the smart materials can detect at this point, but I believe in the future, if this technology starts to evolve and we have nanochips, microchips that we can put on the restoration, this will help a lot.
Okay, I have a few more questions of my own, and I don't see any other hands raised. So, you know, when you started your talk, I was thinking at one point, I wonder if he's going to talk about shading, and I was glad you did, because that seems to be an area that's just ripe for, you know, using technology. So, and I may have missed this, but what do we have now to give dentists to help with shading? Because, you know, typically you see these shading charts and, you know, there's lighting issues, and are we taking them outside from natural light, or is it inside light? You know, and you see how many people have you seen with restorations, and we call them chiclet teeth. So they're like bright white and they don't match their skin tone. So, and I always wonder, you know, I suppose they could have wanted that, but I always think, you know, there was something that went wrong there. So what do we have now that's available for dentists for shading?
Yes.
Shading.
Sure. So that's one of the areas that I love to talk the most. It's part of aesthetic dentistry and shade selection. So as you said, the regular way that we use for shade selection is getting a shade tab, and then that shade tab is the one that we use as a reference. And then there are some tricks that we learn in dental school. That is, we have to get the natural sunlight at 11 a.m. That is the best natural sunlight, and all of that. It cannot be a rainy day and all of that. Why? Because the color is basically the perception of light. So if you have the wrong illumination, you're going to have different things. So, for example, I have a very interesting thing that when we started the Zoom lectures with the students, I made sort of a setup here to show them. So here I'm using a 500K light. So that's mimic natural light. So if I change that to 3000K light Kelvin, I become more orange. You see the difference? I simply change the color. And if I put 7000, I get bluish. So the first trick that is having the right illumination. So what are the technologies that are available? Very simple. You can buy on Lowe's. You buy a light that it has the exactly dimension of color as the sunlight. So you have to buy lights for your office that are 5500 Kelvin. That's the rule number one. And the second thing is, for some certain materials, the color of the material is completely different than the color of the reference. So the reference is made, most of them are made in Germany. So when it comes out of the manufacturer, it comes with a certain color. Of course, that color will not change. But imagine that they produce thousands of those. If you measure 5 shade reference, all 5 are going to be different. So the shade guide from your dentist is going to be different from the dentist on the other side. So what is the best thing to do is having a reference of your own material, the material that you purchase. So if you're going to use a certain composite on that patient, when you select the color, you have to create your own shade tab with the own material, because then you have the perfect shade matching between what is going to happen in the mouth and what is going to happen and what you have as a reference. So those technologies, they are basically no technology, but they are something that the dentist can do. And I would say that 80% of the cases you solve this way: good illumination and a good reference tab. Then we get to cases that are very, very hard to detect. So what is the best way to do it? Besides the illumination and the reference, we can take photographs. So if we take photographs, we can put on a computer. And when you put on a computer, the images get much better in contrast, and then you can play with that. And one thing that is important in color is that we have basically 3 different aspects of color. Is hue, that is if it's blue, green, red. Chroma, if it's a dark blue or if it's a light blue. And the value, how much is that from white to black? our eyes perceive very well the difference from white to black. But if I tell you the difference between blue and light blue, I would say that I always make this joke with my wife. She can see like 5 shades of blue. I can see only 2. So this is scientific, can have a scientific explanation because women has more bastonates on the eye. So women can perceive more color than men. And the thing is, when you have the difference in light to dark, those are the ones that patients will perceive the most. So what do I do is I get that picture as a reference and I simply click the button, put the picture in black and white. Because if I get the grayish part from black and white correct, slightly differences on the yellowish or in the bluish, the patient will not perceive.
Mhm.
And the last thing is everything is expectation of the patient. You have to talk with the patient before you finish the treatment because some patients want the white like a tile, wants very, very white. And in the end, who makes the decision is not the dentist, it's the patient. So the patient needs to decide what they're looking for. So the dentist needs to be prepared to show the patient what is going to look like the case in the end. So basically, this algorithm is basically to help that in a certain way. This technology is not available yet. Of course, we are in development, and development takes a while. University sometimes takes a little bit more in a private company, but it's something that it's the future, and I think it's going to help a lot in the shade and the color of teeth.
Oh, excellent, thank you. And I guess lastly, just I wondered with the Glidewell lab, so do you find that the cost for the appliances coming out of that lab are more costly because of their technology or less because they use less people maybe?
Less. That's what the comment from Shirley. She said, "Oh, you're scaring the lab technicians." Yes, it's happening. So when I start my dental career, of course, CAD/CAM was not that good. So still, we had a lot of lab technicians working on many cases. So what we call PFMs, porcelain infused metal. This is an art to make. I made some courses in how to make them. It took me like 4 or 5 times to get how technicians can do it. And what is happening now is that those good lab technicians, they are retiring, and we don't find people from the new generation with that certain training and ability and experience to make these types of ceramics, the ones that are almost an art. So most of the new generation of lab technicians, they are actually geek people from computing. They are someone that are very, very good in computer that can design a crown, understand the concept, and do everything with automation. So I think it's a profession that is changing. We still have, for very, I would say, elite cases, what they call not more lab technician, but the ceramist. The ceramist is someone that has this eye of someone from Hollywood that will understand the color so deep that will make very nuances of teeth. And these services are expensive. But services that get automated, let's make an example. Car industry. Now with automation, cars start to get cheaper because of that. And lab work, dental work is getting cheap as well. So if you think about Glidewell for the service that they give, they have a very competitive price. And I think this is starting to become an issue as well, because small labs, local business can start to have an impact. Because what happened is, if I get an impression today, I sent to the lab, to Glidewell today, they have FedEx going to California in 1 day. They have everything set for you. You don't have to worry about label, anything. They have the printed label of your account. You posted that. So today is Tuesday. By Friday, I received that in my office and I can cement. Sometimes what happens is, if I send to a local business, because of the demand, that person can only see my case on Thursday. So it will take Friday plus the weekend to get it back. So because of the speed on process, Glidewell is taking over a lot of dental labs because of this. You want convenience. And the thing is, the quality of the work, I would say for many of the cases is the same. You're gonna get both ceramics with the same quality. There's no difference on that. The difference is when you have elite cases that are very hard. Of course, Glidewell has a section for that because they don't want to lose business. They are just flying, skyrocket. But you see that there are some people out there, they are the artists. They can make very, very unique cases, and their cases are much better. So I think the prices of Glidewell are very competitive, sometimes even lower than regular businesses.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I'm sure everybody's happy to hear that the cost of dentistry is going to be going down. We'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, let's see.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up then for us today. And I want to thank you so much for a really interesting, informative talk. We really very much appreciate your time with us today. And everybody, we've got one more talk next week, and we're going to get into some ethics, more AI and ethics on predictive policing. So please join us back here next Tuesday for that. And thank you again, Dr. Rocha.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See
All
you
right,
all.
bye now, everybody.
Thank you.